Hi there, welcome to today's video. A little bit different today because I'm going to be taking you through a commission that I received a little while ago. I don't often take commissions, if I'm honest, well, private commissions anyway, for a number of reasons really, but you know, mainly for being poorly this year. I've not wanted to bite off more than I could chew, so to speak, but this one is a pretty easy one really. There you go. I'm just making a basic kind of pumpkin really. It's just a chap I know that wants a few made. It's a little bit different to how I usually make models in that I'm painting this one, but I'll just show you a little summary of how I've got here already with the model. So I've worked on pumpkins a few times in the past, just with coloured polymer clay and in miniature. So there's a very kind of usual bog standard one here with some gloss and a little jack-o'-lantern that I made last month for my Halloween themed tutorials. So here is the pumpkin given by the chap who's keen for me to do the commission, just as a guide really as to what he's after. So it's a really nice looking object and I should be able to gain a fair bit of inspiration from this. So I'm going to create quite a large ball of foil to act as my centre, because you know it'd be ridiculous to make a pumpkin this size just with no foil inside. So it's quite tough to try and make it as smooth as possible and into the shape that I require. But I've finally got there. And I'm going to use some old clay here, and it's ended up in quite a green colour, but you know I didn't want to use any shiny new clay for an item that's going to be painted over. So I'm just going to try and mould that over the foil as best as I can, and ensuring that it's got a good coverage really. And I'll just smoothen that down with some wet wipes. It's quite labour intensive actually, this kind of working, but you know, hopefully I'll get a good result. I really don't often work in this way. I tend to prefer working just with coloured polymer clay, but you know, it's something that I'd like to experiment with a bit more, really, because it's quite limiting in itself working with coloured polymer clay, because you're really, you know, limited to the colours that you're working with, and you can't get the fine detail into characters sometimes that you would be able to do with paint, you know. So I'd like to take some time to explore this next year. So that's ended up in a fairly good size and shape. So I'm going to use my large ball tool here to create an indentation at the top, and I'll just spend some time in smoothing that down. So with my medium-sized ball tool, I'm just going to go over the line that I created with my needle tool, just to ensure that it's nice and smooth. And again, I'll just exert a little bit of pressure with my finger and a wet wipe. And I'll just keep going around the pumpkin like so. I need to ensure that all my lines match up well at the bottom. And again, just with my medium-sized ball tool, I'll make a nice line over the guideline. So I've been around the whole pumpkin now, and yeah, pretty pleased with how it's looking so far. So I'm just going to create a little bit of texture with my needle tool, like so, just to make it look a little bit more convincing. The good thing about pumpkins is that they're really imperfect looking things, so it's kind of helpful that I don't have to be too neat with this one. So I'm just going to work on my stalk now. Just pop in some liquid Fimo here just so it attaches well. And I'm going to attach my stalk to my pumpkin with a half a cocktail stick, like so. And to ensure that it sticks well or attaches well, I'm going around with my small ball tool here just to try and secure the pieces together, like so, and just try and smoothen those out a little bit. And just some finishing touches. So now I've baked my pumpkin, I'm now in a position where I can paint it. So I'm going to go over with a couple of coats of white paints, just so I have a nice base to work from. Don't know how best to set up the camera really. Let's try some experiments. Okay, maybe I'll have one camera on my face and another, my phone is just going to record me painting my little pumpkin. I think that's the best way for today anyway. I've still got a lot to learn with regard to camera work, so yeah, we'll see how this goes. Just need to wait for this bus to go. So now I'm ready to paint the pumpkin. I've just got a load of paint here. So I've just got some paints that I mixed yesterday actually, because I forgot to paint this white first. I was a little bit down in the dumps last week, I have to say, and you know, I still kind of feel a little bit kind of despondent about YouTube and having a channel, because until we receive further direction, it's really difficult to know kind of what's allowed really. You know, it's all very well coming out with all these kind of rules and regulations, but unless they're kind of explicitly kind of transparent, it's really difficult to know where you fall with regard to kind of keeping in line, because, you know, I'd like to keep my YouTube channel in good standing. Of course, I don't want to receive any fines in the future, because, you know, who's got a spare $42,000 kicking around? I don't know how factual this is, but I know that there are some folks saying that those outside of the US can't be sued, and you know, I don't know if that's true or not. I've never been involved in kind of legal stuff like this before, so I wouldn't like to guess really without consulting a lawyer. If that is true, that is a little bit of relief, but you know, it still seems really overhanded. I've heard as well that there are a few larger YouTubers that are consulting with the FTC, and they've got a meeting lined up, which is good news. So I think they'll be able to kind of share their expertise, and you know, hopefully they'll really kind of make it clear as to why these rulings are really, really difficult. You know, there's a lot of people's livelihoods at risk here. A lot of people make their sole living from YouTube, and to think that could all be taken away overnight practically, it's really, really scary. So, you know, I'm kind of relieved I have just a tiny channel really. So hopefully there'll be a little bit more kind of guidance following this meeting. Who knows really, it's always difficult to tell, isn't it? If you don't know what on earth I'm talking about, by the way, it's probably best to watch my previous video. It's basically to do with YouTube having a fine earlier this year for collecting data illegally around children. So the FTC, which I think off the top of my head is the Federal Trade Commission. I'm going to look that up. Yeah, it's the Federal Trade Commission. Oh, I've forgotten what I was on about now. So the FTC have basically said that well, YouTubers are basically going to find things really difficult for themselves if they make content for children, because they need to basically declare that they're making content for children, and if so, they'll lose a load of privileges on YouTube, and they'll basically be demonetized. You know, I think potentially they'd lose 90% of their earnings or such like. And if you don't declare that you're making content for kids, then you could potentially receive a huge fine. And the grey area for artists is that they're also including content that could be appealing to children, you know, such as models that I make, or, you know, there's loads of artists on YouTube that are really worried. Those that make upcycled dolls, or there's a big toy photography community as well that, you know, are going to be really impacted by this. Yeah, I'm a bit worried because, you know, I've invested a lot into my channel over the last year, and it'd be sad to have to give it up really. I'll link below some videos that are kind of useful to go and watch about the topic. There's one from Nerdy Crafter, and there's another by a chap called, bear with me, Jang Bricks. He's done a really, really useful video. It's probably the best explainer video on the subject for creators, but also the most depressing. So, you know, be prepared. So now I've just got to leave that to dry, I think, before I can apply its second coat. So time for another layer of orange paints. It's actually quite time consuming, this process, because you know, you think it'd be quite quick. Well, I perhaps would, but by the time you kind of wait for paint to dry and add new layers, etc., it eats into your time a bit. So yeah, I've not been able to make this as fast as I'd hoped really, but this is like just a test before I go ahead with the full commission, so at least I know that I'll need to factor in more time if we agree to make any more. There we go. I suspect I'll need a few layers on this. So yeah, in addition, with regard to the FTC, their only real advice so far has been to know your own audience. It's a bit bizarre, isn't it? But I think what they mean by that is really to have a look at your analytics and see whether you're attracting any sort of young viewers. But the difficulty with doing that is that, for obvious reasons, young people or people under the age of 13 aren't tracked on a user's analytics. So having a look at mine, I can see that my audience is predominantly female and mainly based in the US, and coming in at second is the UK and then India. And my age group so far is pretty much exclusively between the ages of 25 to 44, so I don't seem to be attracting younger people, which, you know, is a good thing really in terms of the old FTC. So, you know, that's kind of encouraging. I think, you know, I'm not the youngest YouTuber around, so perhaps that's one of the reasons I'm not attracting a younger audience. So it's good for me, but I can appreciate that others are going to be a bit sort of worried about that, and rightly so. It's just really difficult, isn't it? I think it's really difficult because we're not really in control of the data around our audiences, other than, you know, the sort of basic analytics sections that we're given. And, you know, we can't pick and choose our audience. It's essentially what YouTube is trying to provide for us. Yeah, it's just difficult, isn't it? So that's the next layer applied, and it's obviously going to need another one. So yeah, this is going to be way more of an involved commission than I thought. So it might mean that the commission won't go ahead actually, because there's a lot more work in there than I thought. So it's always good to do a test. So there we go, I'll let that dry again. I think because this project's taken a lot longer than I thought to complete, that I'm gonna work on it away from the camera and get it done, and yeah, I'll show you what it's like when it's done. So here it is, and there's still a little bit more work to do to it, but you know, I just wanted to finish off this video really. I need to add just, I think, one more coat of paint, and I'll gloss that as well. So yeah, for a first attempt, I'm pretty pleased with it. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the more kind of vloggy approach to this video. It's probably the shape of things to come, because, you know, I'm trying to kind of make my videos seem as adults oriented as possible really. I'm just very aware that my work could be construed as being, you know, a bit too child friendly, even though the intention was never there. But, you know, I'm just trying to respond to stuff as best I can really. But I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.